He stood on the wooden deck of his ranger station, coffee cup in hand, watching the purple sunset paint the mountains of New Gangwon in shades of violet and gold. Then, the sky cracked open with light. A fireball tore through the clouds, trailing smoke and debris as it screamed toward the valley below. Ji-hoon dropped his coffee and grabbed his binoculars. Object was no meteor. It was a ship, small and sleek, spinning wildly out of control as flames consumed its left side. He watched it disappear behind the tree line, and a moment later, the ground shook with the impact. "Command, this is Ranger Station 7. Ji-hoon spoke into his radio, already moving toward his emergency pack. "Unregistered craft just went down in Sector 12, requesting..." Static answered him. The solar interference they had been experiencing all week had finally knocked out long-range communication shown. Cursed under his breath and pulled on his hiking boots. He could wait for morning. Wait for the interference to clear. Wait for someone else to handle it. But if there were survivors in that wreckage, they would not survive the night. The forest was cold, and the predators were hungry. Ji-hoon grabbed his pack, his medical kit, and his rifle, then headed into the darkness. The hike took 3 hours through dense forest and rocky terrain. Ji-hoon moved quickly but carefully, using the glow of the distant fire as his guide. When he finally reached the crash site, his breath caught in his throat. The shuttle had carved a trench through the forest floor, snapping trees like twigs before coming to rest against a massive boulder. It was Villani design. He recognized the curved hull and golden trim. The Villani were a fox-like species known throughout the galaxy as merchants and traders. What was one of their ships doing this far out in human territory? Ji-hoon approached the wreckage slowly, checking for radiation or fuel leaks. His scanner showed the area was safe enough, so he climbed through the torn hull and into the dark interior. Emergency lights flickered red, casting long shadows across the damaged cabin. "Hello?" Ji-hoon called out. "Is anyone alive in here?" A soft whimper answered him. He pushed aside fallen panels and followed the sound until he found her. She was pinned beneath a collapsed support beam, her orange fur matted with blood and her golden eyes wide with terror. She was young, maybe equivalent to her early 20s in human terms, with pointed ears that lay flat against her head and a bushy tail that curled protectively around her body. "It is okay," Ji-hoon said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am here to help you." She said something in her language, her voice weak and trembling. His basic translator struggled with the words, but he caught the meaning. "Please do not hurt me." "I will not hurt you," Ji-hoon promised. "I am going to get you out of here." He examined the beam pinning her down. It was heavy, but not impossible. He braced himself, gripped the metal, and lifted with all his strength. His muscles screamed in protest, but he managed to shift the beam just enough for her to crawl free. She collapsed immediately. Too weak to stand, Ji-hoon knelt beside her and opened his medical kit. Her wounds were serious, deep cuts on her arms, possible broken ribs, and a head injury that worried him most. "I need to carry you," he told her, miming the action since his words might not translate properly. "My station is a few hours away, but I have medicine there." She stared at him with those golden eyes, confusion mixing with pain. Why was this human helping her? Ji-hoon did not wait for her to understand. He carefully lifted her into his arms, adjusting her weight so he would not aggravate her injuries, and began the long journey back. She was lighter than he expected, and she clutched his jacket with trembling fingers, as if afraid he might drop her. "You are safe now," he murmured. "I have got you." The hike back was brutal. Ji-hoon's legs burned, his back ached, and his lungs protested the cold mountain air. But he did not stop. Every time he thought about resting, he looked down at the injured girl in his arms and kept moving. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes mumbling in her language, sometimes just watching him with those strange golden eyes. When they finally reached the ranger station, Dawn was breaking over the mountains. Jean laid her gently on his bed and got to work. He cleaned her wounds, stitched the deep cuts, wrapped her ribs, and monitored her vital signs with his emergency scanner for hours. He sat beside her, checking her condition, adjusting her bandages, and making sure she kept breathing. By midday, her fever broke. By evening, her wounds had already begun to close. Vellani healed faster than humans. He remembered reading somewhere by nightfall. She opened her eyes. "You are awake," Ji-hoon said, relief flooding through him. "How do you feel?" She looked at him for a long moment, then around the small cabin, then back at him. Her translator device on her wrist flickered to life, finally recharged enough to function. "You," she said slowly, her voice soft but clear. "You saved me." "I found your ship," Ji-hoon replied. "I could not just leave you there." She pushed herself up slightly, wincing at the pain in her ribs, and stared at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You carried me," she said, "through the forest, through the darkness. For hours you carried me. It was nothing special," Ji-hoon said awkwardly. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "They would not." She reached out and touched his hand, her fur soft against his skin. Then she spoke a phrase that made his translator glitch and stutter, before finally producing a rough translation. "Lifeholder," she whispered, her golden eyes shining with something he could not name. "Mine." Ji-hoon blinked. "I am sorry," he said carefully. "I do not think my translator got that right." But the look in her eyes told him it had translated perfectly, and he had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. 3 days passed, and Ji-hoon learned several things about his unexpected guest. Her name was Yena. She was the daughter of a noble Vellani house, and she had absolutely no intention of leaving his side. "You do not have to follow me everywhere," Ji-hoon said as he walked toward the storage shed, Yena padding along behind him like a shadow. "I do," she replied simply, her tail swishing behind her. "You are my life holder," Ji-hoon sighed and grabbed a bag of supplies from the shed. "About that," he said, turning to face her, "I have been trying to understand what that means, and I need you to explain it to me properly." Yena tilted her head, her ears perking up with curiosity. "You truly do not know?" "Humans do not have this concept," Ji-hoon admitted. "At least not in the way your people do." Yena sat down on a wooden crate, her golden eyes growing serious. "Among the Vellani, life is the most sacred thing," she began. "When someone saves your life, truly saves it from certain death, you owe them a debt that cannot be repaid with money or goods." "Okay," Ji-hoon said slowly. "I understand gratitude." "No, it is more than gratitude," Yena continued. "It is called the soul bond debt. You become bound to your life holder, sworn to protect them, serve them, and remain by their side until the debt is repaid." "And how is the debt repaid?" Yena's ears flattened slightly. "It is not," she said quietly. "Not truly. You saved me from certain death, so I am bound to you for life." Ji-hoon stared at her. "Yena, I cannot accept that." Her eyes widened with shock, and something like hurt flickered across her face. "You refuse me?" "I do not want a servant," Ji-hoon said firmly. "I did not save you to own you. I saved you because it was the right thing to do." Yena stood up abruptly, her fur bristling. "You insult me," she said, her voice tight. "To refuse a soul bond is to say my life has no value." "That is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Ji-hoon ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I meant that where I come from, saving someone does not make them your property. It just makes them someone you helped." Yena stared at him for a long moment, confusion and frustration warring in her expression. "Humans are very strange," she finally said. "You are not the first alien to tell me that," Ji-hoon replied dryly, despite the tension. Yena did not leave his side. She helped him with his daily tasks, asked endless questions about human customs, and slowly began to share her own story. She had been fleeing an arranged marriage to a powerful noble named Lord Kesseth. "He is cruel," Yenna said one evening as they sat by the fire. "His previous wives all died under mysterious circumstances, and my family owed his clan a great debt. I was the payment." "So you ran," Ji-hoon said. "I tried," Yenna replied bitterly. "But someone sabotaged my shuttle. I was supposed to die in the crash, so Kesseth could claim the insurance on my bride price while avoiding the scandal of a runaway noble." Ji-hoon felt his jaw tighten with anger. "He tried to kill you rather than let you escape?" Yenna nodded, her tail curling around herself protectively. "I was never a person to him. I was property. Nothing more." "That is not right," Ji-hoon said firmly. "No one should be treated that way." Yenna looked at him with those golden eyes, and something soft flickered in her expression. "You truly believe that?" "Of course I do." She smiled, a small, fragile thing that made her look younger and more vulnerable. "Perhaps being bound to a human will not be so terrible after all." Before Ji-hoon could respond, his radio crackled to life. "Ranger Station 7. This is Colonial Command. Do you copy?" Ji-hoon grabbed the radio immediately. "This is Station 7. I copy. Communications have been down for days." "We are aware," the voice replied. "We are contacting you about an urgent matter. A Vellani diplomatic vessel entered orbit 6 hours ago, claiming that a noble daughter was kidnapped by humans." Ji-hoon's blood ran cold. "Kidnapped?" "That is their claim," the voice continued. "They are demanding we hand over the kidnapper and return the girl. Do you have any knowledge of this situation?" Ji-hoon looked at Yenna, who had gone pale beneath her orange fur. "I found a crashed Vellani shuttle 4 days ago," Ji-hoon said carefully. "The pilot was injured. I brought her to my station for medical treatment." There was a pause on the other end. "Is she with you now?" "Yes. Stand by for further instructions. Do not let her leave your station." The radio went silent. Yenna was trembling. "They found me," she whispered. "Kesseth found me. We do not know that for certain," Ji-hoon said, though his gut told him otherwise. "He has framed you as a kidnapper," Yenna said, her voice breaking. "If they take me back, he will force me into the marriage, and you will be executed for a crime you did not commit. Then we will tell them the truth. They will not believe you." Yenna cried. "Kesseth has wealth, power, and political connections. What do you have?" Ji-hoon stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. "I have evidence," he said quietly. "What?" "The shuttle." Ji-hoon turned back to face her. "You said it was sabotaged. If we can prove that, we can prove he tried to kill you, and your escape becomes self-defense." "Not a crime." Hope flickered in Yenna's eyes. "You would do that for me?" "I told you," Ji-hoon said. "I did not save you to abandon you." The radio crackled again. "Station 7. Be advised, the Vellani vessel has deployed a search team, and they are demanding to conduct their own investigation. We are attempting to negotiate, but they are not being cooperative." Ji-hoon grabbed his pack and rifle. "Then we need to move," he said to Yenna. "Now, where are we going?" "To the crash site. We need that evidence before they find it first." Yenna stood up, determination replacing the fear in her eyes. "I am coming with you." "I know," Ji-hoon said with a small smile. "You are my shadow now, remember?" For the first time since he had found her, Yenna laughed. It was a beautiful sound, light and warm like bells in the wind. They gathered what they needed and slipped into the forest, just as a Vellani warship descended through the clouds, its searchlights cutting through the darkness like knives. The hunt had begun. Shadows twisted between the trees, and strange sounds echoed through the darkness as nocturnal creatures began their hunts. But the most dangerous predators tonight were not animals. "They are spreading out," Ji-hoon whispered. Crouching behind a fallen log and watching the distant glow of searchlights through the trees, Yenna pressed close beside him, her ears swiveling constantly to track sounds he could not hear. 12 soldiers, she breathed. Maybe more. They are communicating through encrypted channels. Can you understand them? Some of it, she replied. They are being ordered to capture me alive, but you are to be killed on sight. Ji-hoon absorbed that information without expression. Then we need to stay ahead of them. They move through the forest like ghosts. Ji-hoon leading them along paths he had walked 1,000 times during his years as a ranger. He knew every ridge, every stream, every hidden cave in this territory. The Vellani soldiers did not. They are struggling. Yenna observed as they paused on a rocky outcrop to watch their pursuers stumble through a thorny thicket below. They are not hunters. The Vellani are merchants and traders, Ji-hoon said. They are used to ships and stations, not wilderness. This terrain is our advantage. Yenna looked at him with something like wonder. You planned for this. I've been a ranger for 6 years, Ji-hoon replied. Knowing the land is my job. They pressed on through the night, moving in a wide arc toward the crash site while staying ahead of the search parties. Ji-hoon used every trick he knew crossing streams to break their scent trail, climbing rocky slopes where their footprints would not show, and doubling back whenever the soldiers got too close. By dawn, they had covered significant ground. But so had the Vellani. They are learning, Yenna said grimly as they watched the squad systematically sweep a valley below. Someone is coordinating them better now, Cassith? Yenna's ears flattened. Probably he is cruel, but he's not stupid. They rested briefly in a small cave, eating from the rations Ji-hoon had packed and drinking from a cold mountain stream. Yenna watched Ji-hoon check his rifle, her expression thoughtful. Why are you doing this? She asked suddenly. I told you. No, she interrupted. The real reason you could have handed me over when the ship arrived. And you could have told them I was lying about the sabotage. They would have believed a human over a runaway Vellani bride. Ji-hoon was silent for a moment. When I was young, he finally said, my sister was in trouble. She was in a bad relationship with a powerful man, and everyone told her it was her fault, that she should stay quiet and endure it. Yenna's ears perked forward. What happened? I did not listen to them, Ji-hoon said. I helped her escape. Even when people said I was being reckless, even when it made things difficult for our family, because some things are more important than being safe. He looked at Yenna directly. You remind me of her, scared but brave, running from something terrible because you refused to accept it as your fate. I could not abandon her. And I will not abandon you. Yenna's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Your sister is lucky to have you. She says the same thing. Ji-hoon smiled slightly. Usually right before she tells me I am being an idiot. Despite everything. Yenna laughed. They moved on as the sun rose higher. But the Vellani were closing in. Their search pattern had tightened, and twice they had to hide in dense undergrowth while soldiers passed within meters of their position. The crash site is just over that ridge, Ji-hoon said, pointing through the trees. If we can get there first. A branch snapped behind them. Ji-hoon spun around, raising his rifle, and found himself face to face with a Vellani soldier. For a frozen moment, neither moved. Then the soldier reached for his weapon, and Ji-hoon moved faster. He closed the distance in 2 steps, knocked the gun aside, and delivered a precise strike to the soldier's throat. The Vellani crumpled, gasping for air. Go! Ji-hoon hissed, grabbing Yenna's hand and pulling her toward the ridge. But more soldiers were emerging from the trees now. Drawn by the commotion, Ji-hoon fired warning shots to slow them down, then pushed Yenna ahead of him. Run! They sprinted through the forest, branches whipping at their faces and roots threatening to trip them with every step. Yenna was fast despite her healing injuries, her Vellani agility keeping pace with Ji-hoon's desperate sprint. They burst through the tree line onto the ridge and skidded to a halt. A cliff dropped away before them. 100 meters of empty air leading down to a river far below and behind them. Villani soldiers were surrounding them, weapons raised, nowhere left to run. Human, a cold voice called out. A tall Villani male stepped through the ranks of soldiers, his fur a deep red and his eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. He wore the ornate armor of a noble house. And Yenna shrank back at the sight of him. "Lord Kesseth," she whispered. "My wayward bride," Kesseth replied, his voice dripping with false warmth. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble. I will never marry you," Yenna said, her voice trembling but defiant. Kesseth's expression darkened. "You will do as you are told, or your family will suffer the consequences." He turned his gaze to Ji-hoon. "As for you, human, you have been a minor inconvenience. Nothing more. Surrender the girl, and I will grant you a quick death." Ji-hoon stepped in front of Yenna, his rifle raised. "She is not going anywhere with you," Kesseth laughed. "You are one human against 24 soldiers. What exactly do you think you can do?" Ji-hoon smiled grimly. "More than you expect." And somewhere in the forest behind them, a radio beacon began to flash. Kesseth's confident smile flickered. "What did you do?" he demanded. Ji-hoon lowered his rifle slightly, but his stance remained ready. "When I left my station, I activated an emergency beacon and linked it to my radio," he explained calmly. "Everything that has happened since then, every word, every threat, every order has been broadcast on an open channel." The color drained from Kesseth's face. "You are bluffing. The Colonial Defense Force is already on their way," Ji-hoon continued. "But more importantly, every ship in orbit has been receiving this transmission, including your own diplomatic vessel." Yenna stared at Ji-hoon with wide eyes. "You planned this from the beginning." "I knew we could not outrun them forever," Ji-hoon said. "I needed Kesseth to reveal himself, to admit what he did." One of the Villani soldiers stepped forward nervously. "My lord, if what he says is true, silence." Kesseth snarled, but there was panic beneath his anger. Now Ji-hoon pressed his advantage. "Lord Kesseth," he said loudly, making sure the broadcast picked up every word. "You ordered the sabotage of Lady Yenna's shuttle. Did you not? You tried to murder her to avoid the scandal of her escape." "I did no such thing. Your own soldiers heard you threaten me with death for a crime I did not commit," Ji-hoon continued. "They heard you demand Yenna return for a marriage. She fled. Everyone listening knows what you are now." Kesseth's composure shattered. "Kill them both," he screamed at his soldiers. "Kill them now." But the soldiers hesitated. In Villani culture, honor was everything, more important than wealth, more important than power, more important even than life. And Kesseth had just destroyed his honor before the entire sector. "My lord," one of the officers said slowly, "if we act now, we condemn ourselves along with you. I am your commander." "You are a murderer and a coward," the officer replied coldly, "and I will not sacrifice my honor for yours." Kesseth's eyes went wild with rage. He drew his personal weapon, a sleek plasma pistol, and aimed it directly at Yenna. "If I cannot have her, no one will." Ji-hoon moved. He crossed the distance between them in a single heartbeat, his body slamming into Kesseth. Just as the pistol fired, the shot went wide, scorching the rock beside Yenna's head. Ji-hoon and Kesseth hit the ground hard, rolling across the rocky earth in a tangle of limbs. Kesseth was stronger than he looked. His noble training, including combat techniques that caught Ji-hoon off guard. A clawed hand raked across Ji-hoon's arm, drawing blood. A knee drove into his ribs, forcing the air from his lungs. But Ji-hoon had spent 6 years in the wilderness, fighting predators and surviving situations that would kill most people. He grabbed Kesseth's wrist and twisted, forcing him to drop the pistol. Then he drove his elbow into the noble's face with all the force he could muster. Something crunched, and Kesseth howled in pain. The soldiers moved to intervene, but Yenna stepped into their path. "Do not touch him," she shouted, her voice carrying an authority she had never shown before. "This is a matter of honor. Let them finish it." The soldiers froze, bound by traditions older than their loyalty to Kesseth. Ji-hoon pinned Kesseth to the ground, one arm across his throat. "Yield," he growled. "Never," Kesseth spat, blood dripping from his broken nose. "I am a noble. You are nothing but a primitive ape from a backwater world." "Maybe," Ji-hoon said, pressing harder, "but this primitive ape just beat you." The sound of engines cut through the air, and suddenly the sky was filled with colonial defense ships. Their weapons trained on the Vellani soldiers below. "This is the Colonial Defense Force," a voice boomed from the lead ship. "All parties stand down immediately. Lord Kesseth, you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and violation of interstellar diplomatic protocols." Kesseth's struggle ceased. The fight went out of him as he realized just how completely he had lost. Ji-hoon stood up slowly, his body aching from the fight, blood dripping from the wounds on his arm. Yenna rushed to his side immediately. "You are hurt," she said, her hands hovering over his injuries. "I have had worse," Ji-hoon said, though he winced when she touched a particularly deep scratch. The colonial forces landed, and within minutes, Kesseth was in custody. The Vellani soldiers surrendered without resistance, their honor already preserved by their refusal to follow Kesseth's final orders. A Vellani elder emerged from one of the diplomatic shuttles that had followed the colonial ships, a silver-furred female with ancient eyes and an aura of quiet authority. She approached Ji-hoon and Yenna, studying them both with an unreadable expression. "You are the human who saved this girl," she said, not a question. "I am," Ji-hoon replied. "And you are the girl who claimed him as lifeholder," she said to Yenna. Yenna straightened her spine. "I am." The elder was silent for a long moment. "A soul bond between a Vellani and a human," she mused. "This has never happened in all our recorded history." "With respect, Elder," Ji-hoon said, "I do not understand this soul bond. I did not save Yenna to own her, and I do not want her to serve me out of obligation." The elder's ears twitched with what might have been amusement. "And yet she remains by your side, because she chooses to," Ji-hoon said firmly. "Not because she owes me anything." The elder looked at Yenna. "Is this true?" Yenna hesitated, then nodded slowly. "When he refused the soul bond, I was angry," she admitted. "But then I realized he was not rejecting my life. He was rejecting my servitude. No one has ever valued my freedom over their claim to me." She looked at Ji-hoon with something warm and fierce in her golden eyes. "I do not stay because I owe him. I stay because I want to." The elder smiled, a rare expression that softened her ancient features. "Then perhaps," she said quietly, "this unprecedented situation may yet become something far more significant than a simple debt." She turned to leave, then paused. "Human," she called back, "you have made a powerful enemy in Kesseth's clan, but you have also made powerful friends among the rest of us. Do not forget that." As she walked away, Yenna leaned against Ji-hoon's shoulder, exhaustion finally catching up to her. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Ji-hoon looked out at the forest, at the ships, at the chaos he had somehow survived. "Now," he said, "we figure out what comes next together." 1 week later, Ji-hoon stood on the deck of his ranger station and watched the sunset paint the mountains gold. So much had changed since that night he had seen a fireball streak across the sky. Kesseth was gone, transported back to Vellani space to face trial for his crimes. The evidence from the crashed shuttle had proven everything: sabotaged fuel lines, falsified flight records, and encrypted messages ordering the assassination of a noble daughter. His clan had publicly disowned him. Desperate to preserve what little honor remained, Yenna's family had sent formal apologies and offers of compensation. But Yenna had refused to respond to them. "They sold me once," she had said bitterly. "I will not give them the chance to do it again." Now she sat beside Ji-hoon on the deck, her fur gleaming in the fading light as she read through a datapad filled with information about New Gangwon's wildlife. She had become fascinated with the planet's ecosystem, spending hours asking Ji-hoon about every creature, every plant, every geological feature. "This says the silver elk migrate through this valley every autumn," she said excitedly. "Can we track them when they arrive?" "If you want," Ji-hoon replied with a small smile. "Though it means camping in the high mountains for a few days, I do not mind," Yenna said immediately. "I want to see everything." A shuttle descended from the clouds, its elegant design marking it as Vellani. Yenna tensed beside him, her ears flattening. "It is the elder," Ji-hoon said calmly. "She sent word she would be coming today." "I know," Yenna replied. "I am just nervous." They waited as the shuttle landed in the small clearing near the station. The silver-furred elder emerged, accompanied by 2 attendants who remained respectfully at a distance. "Ranger Park." She greeted him with a small bow. "Lady Yenna." "Elder Soren," Yenna replied. Returning the bow, Elder Soren studied them both with those ancient, knowing eyes. "I have come to discuss the matter of the soul bond," she said. "Now that the situation has stabilized, decisions must be made." She turned to Yenna first. "Your family's honor has been restored. Keseth's crimes have absolved your flight, and you are free to return home if you wish. Your clan would welcome you back." Yenna's tail curled around herself protectively. "And if I do not wish to return?" "Then that is your choice," Soren replied. "You are no longer bound by the marriage contract. Your life is your own." Something in Yenna's shoulders relaxed, a tension she had been carrying since the crash finally releasing. Soren turned to Ji-hoon. "As for the soul bond," she continued, "under Vellani law, you have the right to release Yenna from her obligation. If you formally declare that no debt is owed, she will be free of the bond entirely." Ji-hoon looked at Yenna, who had gone very still. "And if I do that," he said slowly, "what happens to her?" "She would be free to go wherever she wishes," Soren replied. "To return to her people, to stay on this world, to travel the galaxy, the choice would be entirely hers." "Then I release her," Ji-hoon said without hesitation. Yenna flinched as if struck. "Ji-hoon, let me finish," he said gently, turning to face her fully. "I release you from the soul bond because I do not want you to stay out of obligation. I do not want you to feel like you owe me anything." Yenna's eyes glistened, her ears pressed flat against her head. "But," Ji-hoon continued, "if you want to stay not because of debt or honor or tradition, but because you actually want to, then my door is always open." He smiled slightly. "I could use a partner for tracking those silver elk. Anyway," Yenna stared at him, golden eyes wide. "You are offering me a choice," she whispered. "It was always your choice," Ji-hoon replied. "I just want to make sure you know that." Elder Soren made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. "How interesting," she murmured. "Do you know what you have just done, human?" Ji-hoon frowned. "I released her from the bond. You released her from the debt bond." "Yes," Soren agreed. "But by offering her a place at your side as an equal, not as a servant. You have proposed something far more significant in our culture." Yenna's face had gone red beneath her orange fur. "Elder," she said quickly. "He does not understand. Then perhaps you should explain it to him," Soren said. With a knowing smile, Yenna turned to Ji-hoon, her tail twitching nervously. "In Vellani culture," she said slowly, "a bond of obligation is considered honorable, but lower than a bond of choice. When someone saves your life and then refuses to claim you as a servant, instead offering partnership as equals," she swallowed, "it is considered a declaration of deep personal commitment, more meaningful than marriage in human terms." Ji-hoon processed that information. "So by refusing to own you and asking you to stay as a friend, you accidentally proposed to me." Yenna finished, her voice barely above a whisper, in the most romantic way possible according to my culture. There was a long silence. I did not know that. Ji-hoon finally said, I know. Yenna replied. But, she took a deep breath, if you want to take it back, I will understand. You did not mean it that way. And I would never hold you to something you did not intend. Yenna, Ji-hoon interrupted. She stopped. Ears perked forward anxiously. I did not know the cultural significance, he said carefully. But I meant what I said. I want you to stay, not as a servant or a debt, but because I actually like having you around. He paused, something warm flickering in his chest. And if that means something more to your people, then maybe that is not such a bad thing. Yenna's eyes widened. You mean that? I am not good at big romantic speeches, Ji-hoon admitted. But you are brave and kind, and you make this quiet forest feel less lonely, so yes, I mean it. Yenna launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck in a fierce embrace. I accept, she said into his shoulder. I choose to stay with you. Elder Soren watched them with satisfaction. I will inform the council, she said. A formal bond between a human and a Vallani. This will be historic. She turned to leave, then paused. You know, she added thoughtfully, human-Vallani relations have been cordial but distant for decades. This union may change that. We are not trying to start an alliance, Ji-hoon said, still awkwardly holding Yenna. We are just figuring things out. Soren smiled. That is how the best alliances begin. She departed, leaving Ji-hoon and Yenna alone on the deck as the last light of sunset faded into stars. So, Ji-hoon said finally, I guess you are officially staying. I guess I am, Yenna replied, her tail wagging happily despite her best efforts to look dignified. You know, being a ranger involves a lot of hiking and camping and dealing with wildlife emergencies at strange hours. I know, and my station only has one bedroom. Yenna's ears perked up mischievously. I suppose we will have to share then. Ji-hoon felt his face warm. I walked right into that one. Yenna laughed, that beautiful, bell-like sound he had first heard in the cave, and Ji-hoon realized he was looking forward to hearing it for a very long time. Far above them, in the Vallani diplomatic vessel still in orbit, Ambassador Soren filed her report to the homeworld. Human-Vallani relations may be entering a new era, she wrote. It began with one ranger who refused to leave a stranger behind. They call it simple decency. We call it extraordinary. She paused, then added a final note. Recommend further cultural exchange programs. The humans continue to surprise us in a council chamber light years away. A senior diplomat read the report and shook his head. One human rescues one girl. And suddenly we are rewriting interstellar policy, he muttered. His aide leaned in. Should we be concerned, sir? The diplomat considered the question, then laughed softly. Concerned, no. Impressed, absolutely. He filed the report and made a note for future reference. Humans handle with care. They have a habit of changing everything.